Help is just a click away with Shoreside Therapy's free 15-minute consultation. At Shoreside Therapies, they offer personalized therapy services that combine evidence-based techniques with genuine care and understanding. They provide various solutions to make the therapy process more accessible, including virtual appointments and assistance with insurance benefits. Their team of licensed therapists is dedicated to helping you build resilience and confidence while navigating life's challenges. Join Shoreside Therapies on your journey to finding inner peace and happiness. Go to shoresidetherapies.com for a free 15-minute consultation and discover the benefits of counseling. At Shoreside Therapies, again, shoresidetherapies.com, and schedule your free consultation right online. Welcome to the Wisconsin Wellness Podcast. I'm Lori Groh, your host, mental health therapist, and practice owner. Each month, we'll showcase a central theme and provide weekly practical hacks, inspiring interviews, and valuable advice from wellness professionals. Our aim is to help you streamline your wellness and mental health journey. So let's start the show. Hi, welcome to the Wisconsin Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Lori Groh. Today we have Helen Cernett, founder and host of the Sleep List podcast. She was a nonprofit fundraiser at the end of her rope, struggling with a long list of medical issues. Underlying all of it was the fact that she could no longer get herself to sleep. With Sleep List, she serves up bedtime dreams every episode by reciting a lulling list of similar items. Lately, she's more well-rested and less on edge. She records voiceover work and speaks at events about her experience with resilience and the power of neuroplasticity. So welcome, Helen.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the introduction. I appreciate you having me on your show. I feel like I'm an honorary Wisconsinite. Like I have to be clear that I grew up in Michigan, so I'm not technically a Wisconsinite, but I spent a lot of time in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and I grew up a Packers fan, so I feel like I have a pass.
A pass. It's true. I gave you that pass. You are a Wisconsinite for sure.
Hey.
So Helen, man, it's so good to talk to you again. I want to hear a bit of your story on how you came up with the podcast. I love the idea, but could you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So, I mean, necessity is the mother of invention, right? And so that was my situation. I was like, I can't sleep. In some populations, as many as 50% of people experience insomnia. There must be a tool out there that'll help me. And so I tried the sleep meditations, and I tried like nighttime yoga, and I tried, I don't know, like the white noises and the green noises and the brown noises. And I tried sleep stories, like, you know, where people are supposed to try to be boring, but tell you a story and that'll help you fall asleep. Ultimately, none of that stuff worked for me. Like I had such a highly active brain during the time of night that I was supposed to be trying to sleep, that I really needed something super, super boring. Auditory was like the most helpful for me. I knew that was going to work. And so I was like, I just want someone to count me to sleep. Let's just have somebody just like counting sheep, but literally just like 1, 2, 3. And I couldn't find it. I was like, okay, maybe someone teaching people English as a second language would have it. And they didn't. And so I was like, I'm just going to make this tool for myself. So I made it for myself. And then I was like, I could do other lists too. Why stop at numbers? I could do the periodic table or presidents of the United States. And so that's where the idea for the podcast came, because I was like, I can't be the only person who needs something different than what's available. And I can make it because I've got an okay voice. I do voiceover work, right? Like I can do this. And so I got a cheap microphone and made a podcast.
I love it. I love it.
Yep.
My own experience, I've had insomnia since I was little. And I think you're mentioning something that's so vital with trying to fall asleep. And that's that a lot of the times it's our brains that are just really active during that time. I don't know about you, but when I was listening to those bedtime stories that are supposed to be boring, I wouldn't find them boring at that time. I'm like, oh, okay, what's going to happen here? And it wasn't quite boring enough. So that idea of kind of hitting that sweet spot of it's not so boring that you can't focus in on it, but it's not something that has a storyline where we might get invested in it.
Yes. And that's that sweet spot that I needed. It's like you sort of knew what was coming next. It wasn't of any significant importance, but you could focus your mind towards the words and the sound of the voice rather than all of the anxious or busy thoughts in your own head. Anxious, self-critical, you name it. I had a spiral set of thoughts that would happen every time my head hit the pillow instead of just going to sleep. And so I really did have to retrain myself with a bunch of tools. And I think of sleep lists as a really awesome emergency tool. Like it can obviously work and continue to work. I still listen to them occasionally. But the best is if you can just self-soothe yourself to sleep without any external tools. But I had no internal tools left for me. And I was like, help. Right. And I wanted that. And so it's an external tool that can really help you. And for me, I now, even if I don't have a sleep list running, I'm like, oh, I can just make up a list of fruits. Let's just think of all the fruits that I can think of. And so I've developed these tools that I can now do a better job of self-soothing. But yeah, when the insomnia was bad, it was really bad. And it did not let my brain focus in on anything but anxious or self-depreciating or worrisome thoughts. Like, you know, am I a good enough parent? Did I remember to do all of these things that I was supposed to do today? Is there anything I can be doing better in my life? Why am I not as successful as I want to be? Am I as successful as I want to be? What should I want? What is the meaning of life?
Yes, all at 11 o'clock at night, these questions, these thoughts, these big ones seem to come at that time. It's not typically thoughts of butterflies and puppies and how did everybody show me gratitude today? You know, it's usually not very positive. I guess how I describe it, it's almost as if you've been closing that door the whole day or trying to, and now you're laying down and somehow that door just got kicked open and here it all is.
Yeah. And there's kind of nothing to distract you anymore, especially if you're a typical Westerner and you run yourself to the core every single day. You're distracted by the hustle and bustle of life when you're in your waking hours. And then kind of all comes crashing down, like all your internal thoughts are just there waiting for you at night and they're not helpful. You need sleep. Like you really need sleep. Yeah. Like the sleep is what you need to have the energy for the next day, to recharge, to be able to have the executive function that you need for the next day, the cognitive abilities that you need for the next day, the energy, like I said, just all of that is what you need. And instead your brain's like, so let's solve all of our problems and all the world's problems right now, but let's do it in a way that makes you feel 100% more anxious than you did 5 minutes ago.
100%. That's exactly what happens for sure. Yeah. With that, it sounds like you've developed those internal skills as well, which is a nice bonus to using the sleep lists. There's a lot to choose from.
Yeah, I've got over 20 episodes now, and I'm working on season 4. I'm behind, but I'm working on season 4, and they range from periodic table to presidents of the United States, states and their capitals. I've got one for dogs, one for breeds of species of grass, colors of gray paint or beige paint. Season 2, I did a whole thing about like idioms related to sleep and rest. And so the episodes were all like, let sleeping dogs lie. And so I listed all the breeds of dogs, obviously counting sheep. So there's one on breeds of sheep. I might do breeds of goats too. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, there's a little something for everything. And I'm working on a pop culture one. So that's exciting. Last season was all culinary stuff, but it was not to make you hungry because I hate being hungry when you're going to sleep. So I did kitchen utensils and how to like things to set hardware to set a table, like those kinds of things. Edible flowers.
One of the things that sometimes happens is that something gets to be too boring, right? Like the sleep list, you've heard it so many times that it might lose some of the actual
impact. Yeah. One of the things that I did is, in addition to the list, there's like an undercurrent of just like really soothing music in all of them, music or sounds, but usually music. And that's helpful because those are usually right around 60 beats, like they kind of real slow, 60 beats per minute. And that's your heart rate when you want to be calmed down. So that's helpful to keep it sustainable. Some of my listeners tune in to like their favorite, like if they choose if a really long episode is their favorite, they'll just fast forward 20 minutes in or 40 minutes in, so they're listening to different parts of it. But then also there's a pretty good variety for you to cycle through. Even if you wanted to listen to a different one almost every night, you have almost a month's worth of them to select and choose from. So there's a lot there. And then, of course, I'm continuing to make more. So hopefully by the time you get through that, there's a few new ones out there as well.
It's long enough that you could start from a different spot if need be, especially if you want. I know for myself, the president's names might be a really good thing. If I'm not sleeping, maybe at least I'm getting something out of the situation for trivia night.
Yes.
You know,
it's presidents and vice presidents. So it was like one of the most interesting ones to research because I only really had my living knowledge and then obviously the founding fathers and that kind of stuff. But I didn't know a lot about the vice presidents of the United States and how often our presidents served without a vice president. So anyway, it was very interesting to research. It's still one of my most popular episodes. People do like to listen to it. And I don't know if it's because I don't know if they're studying for an exam. And so they're looking at the transcript, but it is a very popular one. And it's pretty boring. When you listen to it, it's the Washington administration had so-and-so and so as the vice president. It is very, like every one of them is very similar rhythm. And I do use a very soothing voice when I'm doing them. But it's interesting what you said about getting something out of it, even if you can't sleep. And that's something that I've been really excited to touch on and I've been learning more about is the research that shows that even pretending to sleep, even if you just say, okay, I'm going to pretend to sleep like you did when you were staying up late reading a book and your parents came in and were like checking on you or whatever you were doing that you weren't supposed to be doing. If you just lay there stilly and pretend to go to sleep, that has health benefit. It's not as good as full cycle sleep, but there is restorative value to that exercise. And so even if you're literally up all night, not able to sleep, if you lay down and just are still and calm and pretending to sleep with your eyes closed, you are gaining value from that. A mini version of sleep. All the research isn't fully conclusive yet, but it's really looking like that is a valuable exercise. And the thing is, it's one of the tools to help you fall asleep. So one of the practices that sleep coaches will give you is to just pretend to sleep. And oftentimes that can be a tool to help you actually fall asleep.
And I love that concept too of not an all or nothing, because I think in general, there is anxiety, right? Like the sleep anxiety where you're trying to fall asleep and the more you try, the harder it is. And it is this catch-22 where it's like, oh, I really need to sleep. And then you look at the clock and say, if I fall asleep now, I'll get 7 hours. That's not too bad. And then the next hour, 6 hours. And then there's this strong desire to sleep. Because it's involuntary, sleep isn't something you can push towards. It's
you can't just be like, do it.
Sleep.
Just do it.
Yeah. My husband can. He's got a gift where he can just say, yep, I'm sleeping now. And he's asleep.
Yes. Well, and it's really awesome when you can do that. Oftentimes, if that's your only tool and then it no longer works for you, then you're out of luck. I certainly experienced that because for a long time it was like head hits the pillow, I'm out like a light. It's no problems. And then all of a sudden it was like all the problems. Yeah, that sleep anxiety is really bad because it also then keeps you up. Like you're literally like, there's so much anxiety about going to sleep or getting to bed that you prolong your sleep routine. You doom scroll onto screens, which of course is that light and that input is really bad for your sleep mechanisms. Like internal to your body, but we do it because we want to avoid horrible feeling of not being able to fall asleep. And so then you stay up really late and you're like, maybe I'll just crash. Like maybe I can just make myself crash. All of that is messes with your circadian rhythms and is not super awesome. If you can stay off screens and instead just play pretend, go to bed and play pretend sleep until you actually fall asleep. That's a better tool.
What happens when you aren't sleeping or when you have insomnia? One of the things is that anxiety becomes its own problem. Then we start avoiding the thing we're finding difficult. And then here we are in this pattern of trying our best to fall asleep and not.
And it becomes something that you're dreading, right? What's so terrible? Sleep is this like amazing opportunity to help your own body. There's lots of doctors who will say, if I could just prescribe sleep to my patients, I would, but they don't listen and it's not a pill. But it does a lot of really good things. It helps your body rebuild itself. It helps your blood sugar regulate. It can even help your cholesterol. Although it helps you lose weight. It helps with a lot of things. The difference between being able to take something in that's new and surprising and not immediately be upset or angry is what a good night's sleep does for me. And your days as a working parent, your days are filled with surprises. The teacher's call, or there's like suddenly a project due that of course they knew about for 2 months. It's tomorrow and they don't have something done. Or can I be over at a friend's house, or can so-and-so stay with us? Like all of those little things, like all of those surprises in a day were really like agitating me. Like I was not a nice person to my kid whenever she'd come to me with something. And it was like, I knew I didn't want to be like that.
Yeah.
I didn't want her to be scared of me. And so sleep really, for me, that was one of the major things, like that stress and anxiety and that being on edge and being super cranky and not being able to handle any surprises or changes to the schedule. Like sleep helped me regain that ability to go with the flow and be more capable of handling the punches when rolling with them instead of having a fight or freezing or instantly having that cortisol response, like fight or flight, roar, or freeze, fight or freeze. And that is I definitely had gotten to a place where all I could do was freeze. The grocery stores are like my favorite place. I love food. I'm a huge fan of cooking and culinary stuff. I did a whole episode, like a whole season on culinary stuff of my podcast. I was at a point where I was so deprived of sleep and so anxious and so overworked. Like I just didn't have all these stress hormones that I'd walk into the grocery store and even with a list, I'd be overwhelmed. Like the lights, the sounds, it's like I suddenly developed autism or something. Like I had sensory overload. And that is a result of not having enough sleep. So anyway, sleep is very valuable to us. We should treasure it and love it and treat it like a good friend and get excited for the fact that we can visit with it every single night and have dreams and allow it to help us restore our bodies and our minds to better health.
Yeah, I feel like it's one of the key components to wellness in general, mental health in general, really our whole selves, because like you said, all of the things that are related to our sleep, we try to focus in on, okay, my mood's off. So what are the things I can do for that? And I'm irritable and feeling overwhelmed. And so what are all the things I can do about that? It makes sense to think about sleep as a pillar. This is the thing, if you can change anything about your life, to me, that is the thing that will have the most impact on everything else.
Yeah. So I feel like when you're talking to medical doctors, they talk a lot about diet and exercise, right? And the value of diet and exercise and to our lives. And those are super important. I am not discrediting them. I'm just saying that the third pillar is sleep and that it really should take up about a third of our lives. And we should embrace that our lives will be longer and better for it if we just embrace the fact that a third of our lives should be dedicated to sleep sometimes even more, depending upon what's going on in your life. If you're sick, or maybe you're just a person that needs your 9 hours. But then when you talk to like mental health folks, they talk a lot about, I don't know, they talk a lot about a lot of things, but the idea of balancing your movement and your rest and your consumption and your creation. And so there's 4 pillars, of which one is rest. And so whether you're talking about your physical well-being or your mental health well-being, really that sleep pillar is in both of those sets and is so critical to helping support the others, because if you're well rested, you can make better choices in all those other areas. You can be a little bit more conscious. Like when I talk about neuroplasticity, I talk about the fact that if you're trying to improve something in your life, you're trying to be a better manager at work, or learn new skills in your job, or be a better parent or a partner, all of that is, you have to work to remember to do those things and to get those synapses going and to practice those functions. And if you get good sleep, you're better at it, because you can't actually myelinate all of those synapses, which is just fancy talk for creating those superhighways in your brain that makes muscle memory happen. You can't do that without sleep. And so we need sleep to improve and to build new habits. That is why it becomes foundational.
Yes.
They say it takes 30 days. If half of those 30 days that you're using to build a habit, you didn't sleep well, it may take another 30 days. It just might take a little bit longer, because you need that function, that brain function that can only happen during certain sleep parts of your sleep cycle to allow you to grow.
Yeah. Helen, I'm curious with, what do you think, or what are your feelings on napping? Because that tends to be hard in the Midwest.
So I love napping. I'm a big fan of napping. Number of reasons. One, if you do shift work, you're probably not going to be able to get your full 8 hours some other time. It's very hard to do that. And so if you can break it up into naps, or use those naps effectively to give you your full time of sleep, like to your third of your life that you're aiming for to use for sleep, that's really important. The other thing is, when you need to nap, like when you feel that I got to take a nap, and you actually listen to your body's signals, and you then positively reinforce that signal by giving your body what it needs, that just puts you in better tune with your own personal internal rhythms and cycles. And you might not always need a nap. Maybe you need a nap because your immune system's working real hard to get rid of that virus because someone sneezed at you in line in the grocery store, and now your immune system has to work harder. So go to sleep, because otherwise you're going to get sick. You could avoid 2 whole weeks of being miserable if you just took that nap for 45 minutes and let your immune system do what it wanted to do. So I think of it as if my body says I need to nap and I know I've gotten my 8 hours of sleep, it's like, okay, well then I need a little bit more, because something else is going on. I'm learning something. My body's fighting off a virus or something else. Something's happening where my body needs a little bit more. And so if you can I used to get really upset at my father-in-law, who's a hardcore napper, and it'd be like, he'd have to take his 20-minute nap in the middle of our daytime plans. And it would drive me insane. Yeah. Your whole day is ruined or whatever. And you're just angry at him because you're like, I want to do the things. That man needs his nap. He's a much better human for having his naps. Once I realized how valuable it is to have naps and to listen to your body and to just go with the cycles that work for you, we're less upset about it. Also, he can nap in the car. He's really good at it. So if you're out and about, he can literally just go back to the car, get his 25 minutes in, and then come back and join the fun. And he's better. We're all better. But yeah, I used to get so angry about it because it's it feels so antithetical to our Midwestern culture to take that time.
Right.
Yeah, it feels like a hippie thing to do. And it's not. I promise you, your brain needs it. It's okay to nap.
Yes. My father-in-law is the same. Honestly, every single day takes a nap. And it's something we tease him about, but also just understanding and knowing more about the role of sleep. Napping tends to increase your heart health. Just really taking that information in makes it harder to tease, for sure.
Right.
And also, yes, please do that. My husband as well, where Yeah, it would be almost incredible how he could just nap in the middle of all of our kids running around. Like, how is this even possible?
It's like
But
the house could be on fire.
correct. And so, yeah, for sure that like at that time and that life stage, yeah, it would be a little bit, seriously, guy. But also understanding all the health benefits to that makes me feel
Yes.
very differently about it and wishing that I put in naps into my life a little bit more. But it does make me a little bit more open to it, where, like you said,
Yeah.
hey, listen to your body. It's probably trying to tell you something. And if we continue to not listen to it, it's probably going to tell you it louder in other ways.
Yeah, it's going to be worse. Like it's going to keep on
Yes.
shouting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that idea that you can work naps into your day, I will say the only thing I will say is that if you know you're allowing and you're pretty much getting your 7 to 9 hours of sleep at night and you're still feeling really tired and you need a nap, the only thing I would say is it's worth talking to a health professional about, because there's some tests that they can run to make sure that you are actually getting the sleep cycles that you need when you're sleeping. So if you have sleep apnea or something like that's interrupting your brain's function during sleep, and then you're constantly tired and your body's telling you to always, then I'd say stop. But if you're getting your normal sleep and generally it's enough to get you through the day, or if you're just like, I can sleep 6 hours at night and then I need another hour nap during the day somewhere, or like that's how my body works. That's how my schedule works. That's okay. And especially if you're a rotational shift worker, like healthcare workers in hospital settings, they're so frequently shifting their sleep cycles a lot of times, or they're on call. And so sometimes it's like they're on call, they got to go in, but otherwise they would have gotten sleep. They may need more naps just to help their melatonin and cortisol levels do what they need to do for their body to get what it needs. So it's okay if you're like an ER doc and you need more sleep, especially because you're making life-saving decisions.
I always find that fascinating. The people that probably need the sleep the most in those professions, police officers, hospital workers, truck drivers, where the sleep would be very essential, where the system isn't really set up for that. So I like that idea of really focusing in on how can you get enough? And it's probably by taking a nap.
Yeah. And you can't be upset at somebody who has to make life or death decisions at odd times of day, at varying times in their schedule, like for taking a nap. Like you need that.
Yeah.
Take it. Go ahead. You'll be better for it and we'll have you here longer. It'll be great. I was an international studies major in college, and I don't use a lot of political science in my daily life. But one of the things that we watched was a study of a war room scenario, right? Like an international crisis. You've got diplomats from all these different places. Obviously, they were not actors. They were career diplomats. So they were actually diplomats who were in the study or the subjects of the study. But the study was run in such a way where same scenarios, same new pieces of information came in at the same time. The only difference was that one group was allowed sleep and the other group was not. And the group that was not allowed sleep, like a world war broke out. The group that was allowed sleep, crisis averted. Sleep is good. Well, and I think we expect superhuman things of some of our officials, right? It wasn't a perfect experiment, but it was really interesting to see how important it is to take a break, to regroup, and to even get in those micro naps of 20 minutes. Your brain processes new information in your sleep. And so if you're getting really important new information, it is really good to sleep on it. Like it's not just an expression. You come with better results, like better decision-making power once you've had a chance to sleep on it.
Makes a lot of sense. And some of the things that we need to know, that sometimes happens too. I've had definitely conversations with people that say, oh, this dream I had, now I have this whole different idea on something. And so it can be even more important if you want to do better problem solving and come up with creative ideas or be more productive. We think that sleep takes away from that, but tends to make everything a whole lot easier.
You can function at a higher level. I don't know if you're a puzzle person. I do a lot of like puzzles online, like the New York Times puzzles kind of thing. And I absolutely do better in the morning rather than late at night on like across the board on every single one, whether it's the mini crossword or it's Sudoku or it's the Wordle or some other word game, the spelling bee, whatever it is. Like I do across the board better when I'm well rested. And it's, of course you do. That's so obvious, but you can literally see it in your own performance on something as simple as even like a match 3 game, like Candy Crush. You do better at Candy when you're awake. Now, should you be spending your waking hours playing Candy Crush? That's up to you. But if you wanted to, you can run those tests on yourself and start to see, oh, I'm better at be staying on task and doing this work when I'm well rested and when I stay up late and I try to do it when I'm tired. I used to think of myself as not being tired until I basically was falling asleep in my chair. And now I'll start to rub my eyes and be like, oh, that's a sign of being tired. If you get yourself enough sleep over time, you then listen better to the signals your body is sending you to get back to sleep and to do things. And so then you tend to be less sick. I haven't been nearly as sick as I was. I mean, there was like a period of 4 years where I swear I was sick every month, at least. Like it was like 1 week out of the month, at least I was sick. And now I haven't gotten a cold in I don't know how long.
Like you said, it's your body's in tune with what it needs. And it's usually us that's deciding not to listen. And yeah, I like that idea of really focusing in and knowing that you're going to start to notice more and more of those signals. Bringing it back to the kiddos, like I could tell because they would say something or do something and it was a signal before, luckily for the most part, before the meltdowns. Not all the time, but
how many times have you looked at your kid and been like, dude, you look tired, kid? And your kid's like, I'm not tired, I'm fully awake.
Yep.
And you're like, nah, I can see it. I can see it in you. So yeah, you can see it as a parent. And so sometimes we just have to parent ourselves in the same way. During my like year off where I really was like, I'm not doing anything. I'm just restoring my body to default settings. I basically tried to take myself back to default settings. And in doing so, I was able to be a lot more gentle with myself, like I would want to be with my kiddo, who I wasn't being gentle with, who I then learned like, oh, I can be more gentle with her. And now I can be really upset at her, something that she's done or some like just a behavior or miscommunication or whatever. And I can express that I'm really upset, but we could have a conversation just like you and I are. Yeah. And like we go through the whole thing and we're not raising voices. I don't feel like strangling her. I mean, I'm a definitely better human for having had consistently and on average more sleep. And it's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. There's good nights and bad nights. You can't just be like, all right, I'm going to sleep 8 hours every night this week and then I'm good for the rest of the month. Like the longer you've been avoiding sleep or having problems with sleep, the longer it's going to take you to recreate those habits and get those rhythms back in your life. But it's worth it. It's 100% worth it.
Yeah. So Helen, before we end, I'd love to hear if you had any takeaways, any additional tips for those that are wanting to get better sleep or feel better rested.
Yes. So for any of your listeners who are feeling like they're in insomnia crisis, I highly recommend check out Sleep Lists. It's on any podcast platform, or you can just go to sleeplist.com. And I also would say that the biggest thing is to start to try and embrace sleep. If you've staved it off for a long time, if you felt that sleep was a sign of being lazy, if it was a sign of strength that you only need 4 hours of sleep a night, think about shifting that around and saying that it's a real sign of strength and how much you value yourself and your wellness to try and increase that. And if you're at 4 hours a night, it might only be increasing it to 5 at first. And that's okay. I'm going to give you a big pat on the back anyway.
Yes, yes.
Everybody needs it.
Yes, I love that.
So that's my takeaway. Everybody needs sleep. It's really helpful, and you'll feel better for having it. The whole world would be better if more people slept all.
It seems like everything would be better. Peace on earth, right?
We could hope. We'd be closer to it anyway.
We would, because the peace inside, right? I do believe like the more people that have peace inside, that does transcend and that does impact everybody else.
Oh, but we're going to start to sound really woo-woo. We're going to lose our Midwestern cred.
That's true. That's true. You will be more productive if you sleep.
Yes, exactly. That's what we'll say. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes.
I really appreciated the time together.
Thanks, Helen. We'll talk soon. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for joining us today on the Wisconsin Wellness Podcast. Remember, your well-being is a priority, and we're here to help support you every step of the way. If you've enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast for more inspiring content on health and wellness. You can also join our Facebook group to connect with Wisconsin wellness providers by clicking the link in our show notes. Take care of yourself and remember that your well-being is a journey, not a destination. We look forward to you joining us again next time on the Wisconsin Wellness Podcast. Until then, stay well and stay inspired.